Hi, welcome to the journey. I'm Julieann Hartman, and wow, do I have a show for you today. This show is about my friend Christine Soule, who was trafficked, raped, was a drug addict, meth addict, and she was a stripper. When you hear her story, you will see nothing but the amazing, wonderful redemption of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. When she called out to the Lord, he answered her. I can't wait for you to hear her story. Well, welcome to the show, Christine. I am so excited for our viewers to hear your story. And what I love is that you and I met a couple years ago, and like for 5 minutes, you just gave me your testimony. I think we were on a break, and I was like, wow. I felt like I was exhausted after hearing your testimony. And so now fast forward 2 years later, when, coming up with ideas and having people come on the show and give their testimony, the Lord just brought you to my mind. I said, I got to get a hold of Christine again. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, Julieann, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're an amazing woman. First of all, I just have to brag on this, is that you have a 30-year-old, a 28-year-old, a 22-year-old, and an 11-year-old, and you're younger than me. And so
you're so close, though. I actually have twin 28-year-olds.
Oh my God. It gets even worse. But what I love is that no matter what happened in your past, look what God did. You're a beautiful woman. You're a mover and a shaker. You're doing so many things for people and the kingdom, and it's awesome. So let's get into your story a little bit. So I think I'd like to go back, starting when you were very young. Like, what kind of situation were you raised in? Was it a perfect picket fence home? What was going on?
Oh, that's so cute. No, not a picket fence. I bounced from house to house as a small child. My parents were divorced when I was 5. My father was married 8 times, 9 if you include my mom twice, and my mom was married 4 times. So dysfunction was definitely a part of my world. I saw my father probably about 6 times after my parents were divorced, up until the day he died. And let's see, that was kind of my childhood. My sister, actually, my 3rd father, he was the one who adopted me, and it was the first time I really felt like I had a dad. And my sister actually ended up having an affair with my mom, or with my father. And
wait, hold on.
I know.
You just kind of said that, just like, okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, go back. Let's put the brakes on. Go back. Your sister had an affair with your real father?
My adopted father.
Oh, your adopted father.
Yep.
Oh,
my 3rd dad who adopted me.
Oh my God.
And then they had ran off and got married. So legally, my sister was my stepmom and my dad was my brother-in-law.
No.
Yeah, how's that for messing a kid up?
Okay. I'm like speechless right now because I don't remember that part of your testimony. All right.
We call it my big fat Corinthian family.
So how much older or younger is she than you?
So she's 7 years older than me. Okay. I was 16 at the time.
Okay.
And it was a really vulnerable time for me, being a 16-year-old. And
but how do you even process this? I don't care how old you are. How do you process something like this, that my dad or my adopted father is now my brother-in-law and my sister is my stepmom? I mean, come on. How do you process something like that?
How did I process that? I numbed myself with drugs, is how I processed that, and alcohol, trying to just disconnect from the world. I had actually planned my suicide right after that. And, I had gone out I had written a letter to say goodbye to my mom. And then I decided I was going to go for a walk just to say goodbye to the world. And as I had gone for a walk, I ran into this boy, Chad Hesseltine. He was in my class, and just a nice kid. Didn't really know me that well. Didn't know what I was going through, and certainly didn't know what I was planning. But you know what? He had kindness, and he just had this compassion. And I went to go walk away from chatting with him, and he said to me, "Hey," and I turn around, and he looks me square in the eye, and he goes, "I'll see you tomorrow." And in that moment, I said to him, "I will see you tomorrow." And I made a choice to not kill myself because of one kind act from a 16-year-old boy.
What is so cool about that is how God used that boy at that moment to whether it was eye contact, but it was to spark you with some kind of hope.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You nailed it. I think it was a moment in time where I felt like I mattered. And I think that was a theme in my life, is not feeling like it would really matter if I were alive or dead, and I mattered. And so that kind of set me on a journey. I went to school that next day, and I thought, well, I don't even know what normal is. How am I supposed to act like a normal person when I don't even know what it looks like? And all of a sudden, I found myself just beelining for this one girl. And I went up to her and I said, "Hey, can I stay at your house for a week?" Now, mind you, I'm not the one that you want to take home to mama.
Right.
And so they said yes. And I stayed in their home for a week. And I sat there in awe of what family looked like, and love, and to be valued. And, I walked away and went right back to the drugs and the alcohol. But you know what? It was a glimpse of what real joy was. It was a glimpse of hope. It was a glimpse of what a family looked like. And, I hung on to that. So that, and when I came to Christ, it was that moment that I went, I don't know how to get there, but I'm going to get there. And so those two young kids, as 16-year-olds, completely changed my life and generations to come.
Gosh. You know what's so crazy is that we had a very abusive childhood as well. And I would go to friends' house, and I wouldn't even know how to act in a house that was peaceful. It's like, I'd be like, well, where's the trouble? Where's the this? Where's the that? Where's the anxiousness, the anticipation of the drunk father coming home, and the arguments and all that. And just to be able to go, and know that there's nothing, no one's going to come in and hurt you. That's it's so interesting. And I hate the fact, honestly, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. I hate the fact that as a little kid, you've got to even experience something like that. So now let's go back. So you said your parents got divorced when you were 5. So what happened between 0 and 5? Was everything great?
No. My father was an adulterer, and he was an alcoholic, not around a whole lot. We bounced, like I said, from house to house, didn't have a lot of stability. I have 2 full biological brothers and 1 biological full sister. But at my dad's funeral, I actually met 18 siblings, I believe it was.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And the way he did family is that he would get a divorce, and then when he got remarried, he just started a new family. So it's like he divorced the kids and all. I have 3 brothers named Michael because, well, he liked the name. But that's how disconnected he was to the next, or I should say to the last family.
Now, would you say that it was like a mental, if you were to call it something, did he have a mental issue? a sociopath or, you know what I mean, or narcissistic,
Yeah.
something like that. And did anybody ever like diagnose him with it to stop one family and then start another one like the previous one didn't exist is so odd.
Yeah. You know what? I would say no. I couldn't say that there would be a diagnosis except that he was an extreme alcoholic. And I think it was just acceptable for him. In fact, he was a very good looking, debonair charmer.
Mm.
And, if I were to think of, besides, the alcohol memories, it would be him singing with this gorgeous voice. And he was very, very charming.
Mm.
My mom would still say he was such a charming, wonderful man. But he was an extreme alcoholic. And
Wow.
and I think that the disconnect was he was really able to mentally just start over.
Wow, that's so interesting. So now
Yeah.
your mom was your dad your mom's first husband?
No, well, my mom, she's had a hard life as well. She it was her first husband, but she was actually engaged to one man. Right before the wedding, he went to go play baseball and got hit in the head and died. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So instead of people coming to a wedding, they came to a funeral.
Oh my
And
God.
then she was engaged to another man, and that ended up really crazy. So my dad was her first husband, and then she was married to him for, I think, probably 9 or 10 years.
Okay.
No more than that, I guess.
And then you guys also belong to a religious organization that was a little crazy as well.
Yeah, a little different. The divorce was not something that they wanted for my mom, and so they told her that she had to go back, and so she was kind of forced back into the marriage. That's why I say he was married 8, 9 if you include my mom twice. So she was fully divorced and then fully married again. So legally it was 9 times. So that didn't work out too well. And when she ended up getting divorced the second time, the church didn't really officially kick her out, but she was shunned from the church. And so that's where any sort of faith, I believe, ended. She was very hurt by that. And so, I grew up believing that there was a God, but really didn't know. I never met my Savior at that point.
Wow. So now, okay, so let's fast forward. They get divorced now at 5 years old. So you guys, are you still bouncing around from house to house? Is there any kind of normalcy going on in your life?
I still did some bouncing. I ended up going to 13 schools in 12 years.
Holy cow.
So not a whole lot of stability. The way I would make friends is I would sit there the first few weeks observing people and determining, who's in, who's out. And I was like a chameleon, and I would become what my environment was because I wanted to survive. And I literally went from being a druggie to a straight A student, getting D's and F's to A's and B's. And it wasn't because I lacked intelligence. It was because I was fitting in with my environment. And that's why, even with our nonprofit that we're starting, I believe getting them in the right zip code, and I believe getting them into an environment where people can really flourish. You really are, you become what your environment is. So
Absolutely.
I'm passionate about that because I know that it, through my own experience, it's proven.
Wow. All right. So then you're saying that there were times where you were into drugs and then times that you weren't. So this is going through your whole high school years?
Through the high school years, I started doing drugs at about age 12.
Okay.
And then stopped, and I actually started an organization called Kids Against Drugs. So it was CAD. And I was the leader of that group, and then, went right back to drugs about a year later.
So was it obviously the kids you were hanging out with? Was it numbing the pain? What was the reason to keep going back to the drugs?
Yes, all the above. My husband and I have a saying, that you become like the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And I just think that's really true in life is, when we surround ourselves with people, Jeannie Mayo used to tell us all the time, friends are like elevators. They either take you up or they take you down. Where do you want to go?
So true. So true.
You're right.
Yep. So now you are still in high school. Did you graduate?
Yeah. No.
You did not graduate.
Yeah. I ended up pregnant at 17.
Okay.
I got married at 17 and had my first about a week after I turned 18.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit. So you were you very promiscuous during high school?
No. Well, you know what? Actually, I'll say the closest I ever came to sex was in the 5th grade. And a friend walked in and she goes, "Oh, come here real quick." And so I go over to her and she goes, "We don't go that far." And I go, "Oh, how far do we go?" And she tells me how far we can go. And I went, "Oh, okay." And that was my hard line.
Wow.
That's where I cut it off. And there was, and she told me, she said, "You don't go any further until you get married." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so with the boy that I had met, this was right after all of the stuff that was going on with my sister. And he would say all the time, "Yeah, but we're going to get married, so we might as well." And I thought, oh, that's a good point. And so he was my first and only, the one that I married. So up till that point.
Right. Okay. So you're still in high school though.
Yep.
And so then question, there was no talking about this with your mom?
About sex?
About sex and none of that stuff. There was no talking about it.
No way. Now, my mom was amazing. I will say my mom was my hero. She was my rock. She was my stability. And oh gosh, I'm so grateful for that woman. But we didn't talk about things like that.
We didn't either. It's, it has nothing to do with whether they're good women or not. They just, I'm about 11 years older than you, but I saw my sister get thrown down a flight of stairs when she asked to go on the pill. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to talk about that with my mom, because I knew that was not going to be good. And so, that's why it's so important. And I'm sure that things changed with your kids, that you do talk about those things, because they're going to go get the information somewhere.
Right. Yep.
You want it to be from you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So now, so you meet the boy, you guys, now you got pregnant and then you got married?
Got pregnant. Yep.
Okay.
17, got married about 3 months after that.
Okay. So what was that like?
What was that like? It was hard. I went straight from, I was living in Utah. I went to California, totally different environment. And I was very alone. I was, I really struggled. I felt like the whole world was judging me. And I was really determined to prove the world wrong. People were expecting me to end up divorced. People were expecting me to be a horrible parent. And I just really tried to make things work with not a lot of success, I must add.
So was he your same age?
2 years older.
Okay. So yeah, he was able to provide for you, because California is a little expensive.
Yeah. So he was a construction worker. And so he did make good money from that. But then I was expected to earn money. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So then, Now, so then what's your first child, a boy or girl?
A girl.
Okay, so you had your daughter, and
Yeah.
what's it like to be 17 or 18 years old having a baby when you're a
You know
baby
what?
yourself?
To be really honest, I think more than anything, I felt like I have someone who maybe will love me forever.
Mm.
I felt like, with dads coming and going, um, like I didn't have a lot of value, that I wasn't really important. And so I was actually really thrilled. To be honest, when I got pregnant, um, I wasn't sad. I wasn't scared. I I thought I would have someone who would love me and maybe stay with me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. So now you guys are in Southern California and you are raising your daughter. And what's the next thing that comes up? Because the next baby's not that far from the first one. Or
You're right. The
yeah,
next twins.
the twin.
So let's see. After that, I was working, and
Now, were you off drugs too at this time?
oh, you know what? I never did drugs pregnant. I had a real no-go. Did not drink. None of that. And at the time when I did drugs in earlier years, they were not hardcore drugs, with the exception of a couple occasions I did some heavier drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I had started working. I had my 18-year-old, and I was working nights as a telemarketer and not making an income. I would come home with $0 many nights. And so I actually worked by a strip club. And I had driven by on several occasions, at the stoplight going, oh gosh, and it was a real volatile situation, having to go home knowing that I had to say that I didn't make any money. And so that was hard. And I didn't always like to face what I was going to have to face afterwards. And so all of a sudden, driving every night past that strip club, it started to look a little bit better. Like, I
Oh.
bet they make money there.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I actually pulled in, and I had mentioned it, about going there, and it was highly encouraged that I do. And so I had gone in and kind of totally freaked out and left real quick. A little while later, there I was again, left real quick.
So you
And the
just
third
came to
time,
check it out?
yeah, yep.
Okay.
And then the third time I went in, the manager started talking to me and,
And I'm sure you're
encouraging.
absolutely stunning. Because
Well,
you still are now.
you're so sweet. I didn't believe so. I
Yeah.
didn't at all believe so. But I just thought maybe I could make more money than what I was making and not get in trouble for that. And so, so the third time that I went in, as the manager was speaking to me, I finally, and they had introduced me to a couple girls, and they were trying to kind of coax me into doing it. And the guy had talked me into, just go try on an outfit. Just go try an outfit, see what you think. And so the girls take me into the dressing room, and they give me a try on an outfit, and they were like, you could just try it. You could just try to, just go do a dance and see what you think. And, I was like, I really don't think I can do this. And, one of the girls said to me, she goes, the way you do that is you see that hook over there, and they had like a little coat hook. And she said, you put Christine on that hook and you leave her there throughout the night. And you put on, whatever your name is that I chose, you go put that on when you enter this dressing room. Mm. And then when you leave, make sure you put Christine back on. And honestly, that was how I functioned. But I still told them, no, I'm sorry. And I went out to the manager. I said, I can't do this. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to waste your time. And all of a sudden on the intercom, he says, we have a new girl and she's scared. Why don't you cheer her on? And I felt really mortified. And there I went. And, it was the last thing that I wanted. But I all of a sudden found myself in something that I couldn't get out of.
Oh my God.
And that's where the drugs really began. I ended up to where, if I didn't bring enough income home for that night, he would disappear for days at a time. And so the consequences were great if I didn't continue to do what I found myself doing. And then, there were times where I was actually trafficked, was tricked into a situation and ended up being raped. And, after that, my life really started spiraling out of control. In the midst of that, I should back up. I had my twins. While I was dancing, I was having my twins. I actually was
pregnant?
I was dancing right before they were born with twins. Hello. Yeah. And I was actually told I had to get an abortion because that was income, right? And I was actually 4 months late when I found out I was pregnant. And so I had went to plan, I was going to Planned Parenthood. I was getting the abortion. I did not know that it was twins. I went to bed the night before the abortion and I had a dream. And in my dream, there were 2 babies. And it was kind of a weird dream, but really in the dream, I was trying to care for them. I didn't know how, and I was messing up and I didn't know what to do, but everything in me wanted to care for these 2 babies. And I wake up from that dream and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a baby. It's a baby. I can't do this. And was greatly threatened when I was, firm on the fact that I wouldn't abort. And I went through with it, but I had to keep dancing in order to be able to keep them. And even 6 weeks after I had them 6 weeks early. And then 6 weeks after I had them, I had 1 natural, 1 C-section. I was back to work. Ended up hemorrhaging at work and ended up in the hospital as a result. So
wait, wow. Okay. Well, I've never heard of a C-section and a natural birth with twins.
Hello.
Was one stuck?
Yeah, one little guy. As soon as one came out, both boys, identical boys. They're beautiful. One came out and the other one flipped this way. And so it took about an hour to try to turn him, and then he quit breathing. So they just had to take him immediately. So yeah.
So then obviously something went wrong with the C-section because did you get nicked or something, or was it just an infection that went bad? Like what happened?
No, I think that I never stopped bleeding and I was overexerting myself. So I think that, sometimes after you give birth, you're capable of hemorrhaging afterwards. I don't know if something opens back up or what, but yeah.
So did you pass out at work?
I started profusely bleeding and getting very shaky and white, everyone was saying. And so they ended up calling an ambulance. And I remember being so mortified because now that was Christine at the hospital, right? Not the other girl. And I'm in my mini skirt and my high boots. And I just remembered feeling, but this is Christine, the mom of 3. And I was so mortified that girl exited outside. Very strange thought for me.
Christine, could that lead to something like a multiple personality problem? When you are, you're Christine, then you're the dancer, you're Christine.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that it didn't, but man, I could see how that could really mess with your head.
Right. I think it probably could. For me, it was how I could function. So if someone probably took that a little bit deeper, I think potentially it could. And the interesting part about that whole experience too was that many years later, I was sitting down with a friend who works with traffic victims. She was trafficked. Crazy story. And she said to me, she goes, "Oh, I didn't realize that you were trafficked as well." And I go, "I wasn't trafficked." And she's like, "Christine, you were trafficked." And I'm like, "No, I was not trafficked." And she's like, "You were trafficked." And we're going back and forth. And I'm like, "No, honey, you're so wrong." And I go, I'm heavily involved with different trafficking organizations to stop trafficking. I'm totally aware of this. And she goes, "Did someone profit from you sexually?" "Yeah, totally." "Were you forced to do it?" Oh yeah." "Did you try to quit?" "All the time." "And what happened if you did?" "Yeah, that wasn't good." She goes, "Can you explain to me the definition of trafficking?" And I sat there like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Well, imagine how many other women
That's
really
it.
have been trafficked without even realizing it.
That's it. And the thing is, we, especially in America, we picture trafficking as some precious little girl who was abducted and stuck into this, dark room, and it's locked all the time until she's coming out to have to perform sex. And the truth is, that's not it at all. You know how trafficking starts? Trafficking starts by a man walking up to a girl saying, "Hey, you're pretty." Did you know a trafficker will know whether he's capable of trafficking that girl by that statement? Moms and dads, do not teach your kids only to stay away from the creepy white van. Teach them to value themselves. Teach them that they matter. Teach them that when you spot someone like that, the wolf in sheep's clothing, that they'll immediately identify that is not love. And I think that's the key. And trafficking is an ability to manipulate a woman into or coercion of doing something that they don't want to do.
Right.
And I never realized that. And the other thing is, I never saw myself as a victim, number one. And I also saw as I chose this. Now, I shared my story, and it was, I drove past that place. I went inside. I went to that job every day. That'd be my fault, right?
Right.
The trafficking component in that is when you are trapped and you do not have the right to leave. And that I never realized. And that manipulation of women feeling like there's no way out. There's no hope. This is the only thing I could ever do. And that is such a lie from the enemy.
Yes. Now,
so trafficking is very different, I think, than what most people realize.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And, we've got, and listen, when you feel unworthy, unloved, no one cares about you, and someone goes, "I think you're really pretty." Really?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's it.
Immediately we're a target.
Yep.
And that's where that's where the enemy does come in, because if you don't have Christ, you don't have, no love, that kind of love,
I talk about this a lot in my book. I have a book, Broken and Beautiful, that's about to come out.
Okay.
But I have a chapter on identity, and that's a big deal. What was that?
It's been out for a while.
No, it hasn't come out yet. We're about to launch here probably within the next month.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so the name again is what?
Broken and Beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
well,
thank you.
People, get the book. If you're watching this, get the book, and we will advertise it as well.
Oh, you're amazing.
Yeah. So, okay. So now you you're in the hospital.
Yep.
And how long were you in the hospital? And by the way, who's taking care of all the kids?
Yeah. So they were usually with their biological father, or there were friends too. So I worked nights and he worked days. And then that was where part of the drug addiction really stepped in. This is where things got really out of control with the drug addiction, is that my boys were babies and I had a toddler. So I had 3 kids before I turned 20 years old, and I couldn't sleep at night. I would work all night long, and then I would get home at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they'd be up by 6 or 7. And so I was just having a really hard time functioning. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, well, you just need speed, which is meth." And I was like, "Well, what does that do?" And she goes, "Well, you don't need to sleep." And I was like,
"Oh my God,
that's perfect. That's exactly what I need, just no sleep." And that's what I did. I did daily meth to take care of my kids during the day. That was completely my logic in doing meth.
Wow.
So I could just function to care for my kids. And that became a daily occurrence. And there was one point where one of my boys actually, the owie cry, they're about 2 years old at this point, and I woke up and I went to go run to my child, and I ran to the drugs first. And I thought, I need to be able to function to be able to take care of my child. And in that moment, I froze. And I thought, I just chose these drugs over my crying child.
Oh my God.
And, I fell to my knees and I cried out to God. And I said, "God, if you could do anything with my life, take it. It's yours." And I so tangibly felt the power and the presence of God that I threw the drugs and alcohol away. And I never once, from that moment on, had a desire, temptation, or withdrawal. I was completely delivered. And, it was right after I was raped, and everything could not have gotten any worse. And it was that moment where, I really genuinely, with everything in me, surrendered to God. And that's where my journey began, I believe, with my walk with Christ. So, and Christine, the baby was fine.
But up to that point, Jesus was not anywhere in your life, or was he?
I would say he was in my life. I wasn't in his. I would have lots of glimpses of Jesus, lots of moments where, looking back, I saw a savior. And very ironically, I would sit in a strip club, telling these men who would, share their whole life stories with me. And I knew I couldn't fix them, but I would tell them that they need Jesus.
Oh, interesting.
The stripper next to them. So I could be sitting high in a bar, drunk, and I would be telling people they needed Jesus. When people started telling me their difficult stories, I started telling them they needed Jesus. And yet I never knew that to be true in my own life until that moment I fell to my knees.
You know, this is interesting because out of all the journeys that we've done, there's been 3 that have had a lot of drugs involved in it. And each person that said the same thing, they would tell everybody about Jesus, but they didn't know Jesus for themselves.
Really?
Yep. Yep.
Huh.
Yep. You're the 3rd one.
Wow.
And
He marks us and calls us. He was wooing me that whole time. I just didn't know it.
Yeah. One of our teachers on Healing Journeys today is Jeremiah Klaas, who was actually healed of multiple sclerosis, and his just being just completely out of his mind, wasted, and telling everybody in the bar about Jesus.
Yeah.
And giving prophetic words.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, see, that's where he's just as close as he is. You know, no matter what, whether we accept him or not, he never leaves us or forsakes us ever.
Right.
You know, and he's chasing after you daily, you know.
Yep.
So
no matter where we are, he meets us in that place. He met me in the strip club when I'm witnessing his name. He was meeting me there.
Did people laugh at you when you would tell them about Jesus? Like, really? Are you kidding?
Do you know, I am really tenacious. I don't think I really cared what people thought. I have been such a bold speaker for Christ. Like if you went to the gym when I first got saved, like you were coming to my church and you were giving your life to Jesus. Like you really didn't have a lot of option. So I just love talking about Jesus, and I can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. That's my calling is to follow him, and my heart cry is to just lead people one step closer to him. If I can do that, then my life was a success.
That's so great. That is awesome. Okay, so let's go back to that moment where you gave everything up. Now, did you stop stripping?
Yes, I did.
So
and
that day, you got released of drugs, alcohol, and stripping.
Yeah, I didn't go back. And, you know, I will tell you, I told God, I kind of gave him a laundry list. I will never do this. I will never do these things again if you'll help me. And I never did those things again. I never did them again. And you know what's cool too is, you remember I told you about that story about being a 16-year-old girl, maybe I was 15, going to that girl's house, and I got a glimpse of what real joy was.
Right.
That was the moment. It took me, when I gave my life to Jesus, it took me right back to that moment of, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but that's the life I'm going to show my kids. I'm going to do it. And I was so determined to give them a life of joy and love, and just surround them with godly insight. And so I set out to do that. It wasn't easy.
I was going to say, but at this point, how old are the twins?
Twins were about 2.
Okay. And how is your marriage? Is there a marriage going on at this time? Or are you guys just existing? Like, what's going on? Do you argue?
Well, it was rough. It was very rough. We shared a house, and there was abuse, there was violence, there was anger. I was actually living a gay lifestyle at that time.
Okay, so I didn't know this part, and this is pretty crazy. So we're going to stop here for part 1, because we've got to go now to do part 2, because obviously there's a lot more to this story. And I'm so appreciative and so thankful that you are sharing the story, because just the fact of, look where you are today. And that's why I can't wait for people to hear the redemption side of this and what God has done for your life, you and your husband. And it's awesome. So thank you so much. And we will see you for part 2 for the Christine Soule story.
Fabulous.
Well, I know that part 1 totally blessed you because it did me. Just to see the redemption of what God can do when you cry out to Him and He answers your prayer. I can't wait for you to see part 2. And if you want to help us continue these shows, please go to healingjourneystoday.com and donate. This is awesome and you can be a part of it. So I'll see you guys next week for part 2.